Back on launch day, I picked up the iPhone 17 Pro Max from my local Apple store. I've been daily driving it since then, but recently I've been tempted to switch over to something a little more unorthodox. You see, this phone on paper is amazing. It's got a 6.9-inch OLED ProMotion display, reaches up to 3000 nits peak brightness, the rear camera system is nuts, it now includes 3 of the 48-megapixel Fusion camera sensors in wide, ultra-wide, and 4x telephoto. The processor is one of the fastest on the market. It rivals its desktop class cousin, the M2. This year's iPhone also came with the new vapor chamber, which helps keep the processor cooler for longer. There's no longer an option for 128GB, instead all Pro phones start at 256GB of storage. Connection speeds over the USB-C port reach up to 10 gigabits a second, which makes it possible to shoot impressive 4K video and Apple Log straight to an external drive. This thing is definitely chunky, but makes up for it by having the best battery life I've ever experienced in a smartphone. This year was also a significant departure in design for Apple, who opted for this aluminum unibody design. Apple also introduced the new Ceramic Shield 2 glass on the front of the phone, while the backside is the original ceramic shield. And they finally updated the wireless charging to Qi 2, which can now charge up to 25 watts wirelessly. The phone on paper is perfect. I've quite enjoyed my time with this phone, but that, however, is the issue. I keep finding myself spending too much time on my phone. I keep catching myself doom scrolling on Instagram or Twitter, or watching YouTube when I could be doing other stuff. I am surrounded by screens all day long, staring at my work computer and then coming home to stare at my laptop screen, and then taking a break by sitting down to stare at the TV. The last thing I want is to spend more time staring at screens, but I keep finding myself reaching for this phone every time I had some downtime. This led me to look for other options. There's no getting around spending a lot of time looking at the screen for work, but how could I reduce my screen time in other areas? Well, for one, I already got rid of my TV. That was a pretty easy win. But what about the little screen I carry around with me everywhere I go, which I can use to access endless entertainment with the click of a button at any time, day or night? I can't exactly get rid of it. I need my phone for authentication at work. I need it to send messages and make phone calls. I need it to change my thermostat and open my garage. There's just too many conveniences or necessities associated with my phone. Giving it up completely just isn't a serious solution. I thought I might try to look around for a cheap unlocked Android phone, but it seems like most of the cheap unlocked Android phones have huge screens for some reason, which completely negates the purpose. And going with Android anyways would mean losing quite a lot of the creature comforts that come with being inside Apple's walled garden. I already own an Apple Watch, I work from a MacBook, being able to send texts and get notifications from my laptop is a killer feature. What's more, I'd lose the blue bubbles, which I agree is kind of a dumb reason. However, I didn't want to disrupt all the group chats I'm in with family and friends who all use iPhones. Enter the iPhone SE 3rd generation. The iPhone SE fulfills all my requirements while at the same time not being very pleasant to use. I want to reiterate, it is not very pleasant to use. By today's standards, the 4.7-inch Retina display is downright minuscule. The large forehead and chin have been out of vogue for nearly a decade. Touch ID is actually a welcome feature, albeit a bit slow sometimes. However, it's got the same chip that came with the iPhone 13, the A15 Bionic. Miraculously, it supports 5G, runs the latest version of iOS, connects flawlessly to my CarPlay radio, I can use all the apps that I need, I can FaceTime and iMessage no issue, and it's a dream to carry around compared to the iPhone 17 Pro Max. It's extremely budget friendly. I picked up my model under $200 in used but nearly perfect condition from Best Buy. With all that said, the battery is not great. Even though I was incredibly lucky by getting a used phone with 100% battery capacity, that capacity is still laughably small. It'll last me all day if I don't use it for long periods of time, but most days I find myself plugging in to top up sometime in the afternoon. I can still make all the calls and send all the texts I used to, but scrolling Instagram or Twitter or even spending too much time looking at things on Safari really kills the battery life. It makes up for this by being almost completely forgettable in my pocket. No more getting jabbed in the hip when I sit down, no more tightening my belt to keep my pants up, no more carrying my phone in the hand to avoid keeping it in my pocket. The camera's surprisingly decent. It retains that quintessential Apple photo look, whether you love it or hate it. There's only one 12-megapixel sensor on the back compared to the Pro Max's 3 48-megapixel sensors, but most of the time this isn't an issue. The pictures look sharp enough on small displays. It is just one sensor though, and I found myself in situations where I've missed the ultra-wide and telephoto of the Pro Max. In one instance, I needed to read a sign from a distance but didn't want to get out of my car. What would have been a super easy task for my 17 Pro Max was nearly impossible for the SE. Even after all the processing and sharpening Apple adds to zoomed in images, I still could not make out what the sign said. Before switching over to the SE, I never really realized just how often I used the ultra-wide and the telephoto. I'd say the SE's camera can cover about 80% of my use cases adequately, but the remaining time is spent wishing I had the Pro Max with me. Now, obviously, comparing a $200 phone to a $1,200 phone is going to leave me missing the more expensive device. But does the SE excel in the most important aspect, the whole reason I switched in the first place? Well, the numbers should tell you everything. I'm going to put them up on the screen. My daily average screen time went from over 4 hours to around an hour and a half. Even with screen time limits placed on apps like Instagram and Twitter, I would find myself spending hours in these apps on the Pro Max. On the SE, the screen is simply too small to comfortably watch Instagram Reels for hours on end, or scroll through my Twitter timeline. And you can forget having an enjoyable experience watching YouTube for long with the SE's tinny speakers. I also feel more conscious of my time spent on the SE, as battery life is a serious concern. But imagine gaining 3 extra hours to your day. I found myself with no other recourse but to spend my time in other activities, such as reading a book, writing for my blog, working on my website, and creating this YouTube video. So that brings us to the $1,200 question. What will happen to my Pro Max? I want to continue swapping between the two before making any permanent decisions. Swapping eSIMs has gotten a bit tiring though, so I found myself keeping my phone line active on the SE. The Pro Max usually sits in a bin turned off to conserve battery. I've seriously been considering putting it up for sale, but it is such a nice device. I keep searching for any way to keep it. I will say, if you ever find yourself in a position similar to mine, and you've been struggling with screen time as well, I'd recommend downgrading. If you can't see yourself rocking the iPhone SE, perhaps consider getting a used iPhone 13 mini. The mini seems to offer a lot of the advantages of having a smaller device, while also having many of the features found on newer iPhones. You can find used minis for not much more than what I paid for the SE, and if you want to go with the SE, you could most likely find one in used but good condition for under $150 easy. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this was at least informational, if not entertaining. Please share any thoughts you have in the comments. It'd be kind of fun to see your guys' perspectives. Peace out.